They say the worst sin in Cosa Nostra isn't murder, it's betrayal. Tonight, you're gonna hear from me, the rat. Yeah, I broke Omertà. I turned on my brothers. I walked into the lion's den with a wire strapped to my chest and the ghosts of a dozen secrets in my pockets. You think you know fear? Try sitting across from a Fed while your capo's goons are combing Brooklyn for the snitch who sank the whole crew. That was me. This is the memory that's kept me awake every night since, and now I'm ready to tell it. The Betrayal of Brooklyn. I still remember the sound my shoes made on the marble floor of the FBI building. Click, click, click. Each step felt like a countdown to my own execution. The air was too clean, too still, like a morgue. My mouth was dry as sandpaper, and my heartbeat was hammering in my ears so loud I thought everyone could hear it. It was a Tuesday night, cold as a grave, January of '88. Snowflakes clung to my trench coat as I slipped through the revolving doors on Varick Street. I kept my head down, collar high. I looked like any other schmuck trying to get warm, not a made guy ready to burn down his own house from the inside. I'd rehearsed it 1,000 times in my head, what I'd say, how I'd say it. But when that elevator door closed behind me and I hit the button for the 9th floor, my knees buckled just a little. Not from fear of the feds, from fear of my own people. If word got out, even a whisper, that I was meeting with the Bureau, I'd be found in a trunk before sunrise. No trial, no second chances. The rules were written in blood and concrete, and I was about to piss on the whole book. I didn't turn because I was weak, or greedy, or looking for a way out. I turned because something snapped. You can only watch so many people you love get used up and thrown away before your soul starts to rot. And me? I'd been rotten for years. They had me wait in a bland little room with a flickering overhead light and a table that stank of disinfectant. A young agent came in first, too green to understand the gravity of what I was about to drop. He offered me coffee. I said no. Then came the real ones, the suits with cold eyes and folders thicker than a Sunday paper. They already knew my name, my rank, who I ran with. They just didn't know why I was there. When I finally opened my mouth, my voice cracked like I was 13 again. "I got something that'll make you famous," I said. That line, it still haunts me. Like I was proud, like I thought this was some kind of play for glory. Truth is, I didn't know who I was anymore. I was tired of the lies, the blood, the guilt. Tired of pretending that loyalty was still a two-way street. They leaned in. I saw the flicker of recognition in one agent's eye, the moment he realized I was the real deal, not some wannabe looking to cut a deal over a nickel bag. I was a soldier, made in '79. I'd carried out orders, collected debts, buried bodies, and now I was ready to unload every secret I knew. But make no mistake, I wasn't safe, not even close. The moment I walked out of that building, I knew I had a bullseye on my back the size of Bensonhurst. And worse, I wasn't sure if I could live with what I'd just done. I didn't sleep that night. I went back to my apartment in Gravesend, a little walk-up I kept separate from my main home, the one my wife thought was my office. The blinds stayed shut, lights off, gun on the kitchen counter. I sat in the dark with a pack of smokes and the kind of silence that eats at you from the inside. Every sound made me jump. A car door slamming, pipes hissing, footsteps in the hallway. I kept expecting the knock. You know the one. Slow, deliberate, like death himself was just being polite. I played it over and over again. What I told them, what I left out, the names, the places, the bodies. Part of me felt sick. Another part, the one that had been suffocating for years, felt relief. Like I'd finally exhaled after holding my breath for a decade. But don't get it twisted. I didn't feel heroic. I felt hunted. Because I knew the rules. You break Omertà, you're not just a rat, you're a dead man walking. The next morning, I took a cab out to Sheepshead Bay and stared at the water like it could give me answers. I thought about my father. He was never in the life, but he knew people, grew up hard. Used to say, there's two kinds of men in this world, those who can live with themselves and those who lie to themselves until they can't. Back then, I didn't know which one I was. Now, I wasn't sure it even mattered. I'd agreed to meet again with the feds in 3 days. I had to pretend nothing had changed. Smile at the guys, shake hands with people I might one day send to prison. That's the thing no one tells you about betrayal. It starts slow. You don't feel the weight of it all at once. It creeps in, settles in your bones. At the club, everyone was laughing, playing cards, busting chops like usual. But I saw them different now. Frankie with his fake gold watch, still trying to impress 20-year-olds. Big Sal nursing a drink and watching everyone like he was already paranoid. Tommy 2 times running numbers out of the back room like he was bulletproof. I used to think they were family. Now I saw them for what they were, wolves in suits, and I was bleeding in the middle of the pack. I couldn't look my capo in the eye, not after what I'd done. He was a hard man, old school. Used to read Machiavelli and quote it like scripture. Loyalty was everything to him. And I was already halfway out the door, whispering secrets to the people who wanted him in cuffs. That night, after I left the club, I threw up in an alley behind a deli on Avenue U. My stomach couldn't take the weight of the guilt, but I wiped my mouth, lit another cigarette, and walked like nothing was wrong. Because that's what rats do before the trap snaps shut. Brooklyn was my cradle and my curse. I grew up on East 2nd Street, a stone's throw from the F-line, back when kids still played stickball in the street and the corner candy shop gave out credit if your old man had a name worth something. My old man didn't. He worked at the Navy Yard, calloused hands and a busted back, honest to a fault, and broke because of it. But the guys on the corner, the ones in sharp suits with Cadillacs that purred like jungle cats, they had a different kind of respect. They didn't wait in unemployment lines, they didn't punch clocks, they got paid just for being feared. By the time I was 12, I was already running packages for little Tony, a soldier under the Colombo flag. He had a hair trigger and a twisted smile, but he paid in cash and never asked twice. At first, it was envelopes. Then it was picking up bets. By 16, I was doing collections. By 18, I had broken a guy's arm with a tire iron outside a laundromat because he owed $3,000 and thought skipping town was an option. That's how it starts. Not with some big ceremony or blood oath, just favors. Then more favors. Then, one day, someone you trust says, "You did good, kid," and hands you a pinky ring. My button came in '79. I was 23. It happened in the back room of a bakery in Bensonhurst, the smell of fresh bread and gun oil thick in the air. We pricked our fingers and swore the oath. Loyalty till death. No cops, no rats, no forgiveness. That moment, I thought it meant I finally belonged, that I was part of something bigger than myself. I wasn't just some punk from Brooklyn anymore. I was a made man. And for a while, it was good, real good. I had a crew, my own Shylocks, and a percentage of everything from card games to union scams. We'd meet at Louie's Diner after jobs and order breakfast at 3 a.m., laughing like gods who'd stolen fire. We buried problems in the marshes off the Belk Parkway, collected payments with crowbars and crow smiles, and when we walked into a room, people moved, not out of courtesy, but out of fear. There was a brotherhood in that. Twisted, yeah, but real. I trusted those guys with my life, and I thought they trusted me with theirs. But even in the early days, the cracks were there. Frankie D would skim off the top and blame the numbers guy. Big Sal was always looking over his shoulder, paranoid someone was tailing him. I'd catch whispers at bars, rumors that made my skin crawl. Things like, that guy, he's got loose lips, or I heard someone's talking to the feds. Still, I stayed loyal, not because I was scared, but because I believed. I believed in the rules, in the code, in the idea that we were untouchable as long as we stuck together. It would take years before I learned just how wrong I was. There were moments, looking back, where the rot was already visible, like rust under the paint. But in the life, you learn to look away. You drink it down with your whiskey and smile like you don't smell the fire creeping closer. One of those moments came in '83, during a sit-down in the basement of a florist shop on Kings Highway. We were settling a beef between our crew and some Gambino guys over hijacked merchandise. My capo, Vito the Bishop Mancuso, leaned into me and said, "If this goes sideways, you don't hesitate. You hear me? No thinking, just doing." I nodded like a good soldier, but I remember thinking, what if the other guy's just doing his job too? The life didn't leave room for questions like that. Vito had taken me under his wing early. He saw something in me. Maybe it was discipline, maybe it was hunger. He liked that I didn't talk much, and that when I was told to do something, I did it clean. No mess, no drama. He once called me the quiet storm, said I was the kind of guy you send in when you want someone to disappear, not just bleed. And I wore that like armor. But it also meant I saw things, heard things, things you can't unsee or unhear. Like in '85, when a guy named Lou Caparelli, a maid guy from our own crew, got pinched on a gun charge. Everyone figured he'd eat the beef, do his 5 years like a man. But Lou, he had a baby on the way, a mortgage, sick mother, the whole sob story. Next thing we knew, someone leaked that Lou might have flipped.
No proof, just whispers. 2 weeks later, they found Lou in a warehouse in Red Hook, face down in a pool of his own teeth. His tongue had been cut out, stuffed in his coat pocket like a calling card. I was there when they found him. Vito looked at the body and said, cold as ice, "That's what a rat gets." I nodded. I had to. But something twisted in my gut that night. I remember going home, sitting on the edge of my bed while my wife slept, staring at my hands like they weren't mine. You start telling yourself it's all part of the job, that these men knew the risks, but deep down, something was shifting. Then came the job in '86, a bank truck hitting Queens that turned sideways fast. One of our own took a bullet to the gut. Another guy, Mikey Rezzo, panicked and nearly left us behind. We got out, but barely. And instead of regrouping like we used to, there were accusations, finger-pointing, paranoia. The trust was eroding. Even Vito started to change. He got colder, more suspicious. He'd call me at 2 a.m. just to ask where I was. One time, he asked me what I would do if someone in the crew started talking. I gave him the right answer, but in my head I was thinking, what if that someone was me? I didn't know it then, but the seeds of betrayal had already been planted, and they were growing fast in the shadows of Brooklyn. It started with a phone call, a short one. "Jimmy, we need to talk. Alone." It was Vito. No time, no place, no tone. Just static and that cold rasp of his voice. He hung up before I could even say a word. And just like that, my gut twisted into a knot the size of Manhattan. I was already on edge before the call. For weeks, things had been unraveling. Guys weren't showing up to meetings. Scores were getting botched. There was talk that the feds had bugged a couple of our spots, including Rizzo's bar, where we used to conduct low-level meetings. When you spend years navigating this life, you start to feel it when the tide turns, and I could feel it. Every muscle in my body was screaming that something bad was about to break. That meeting with Vito, it was the moment I realized I wasn't just paranoid. We met in an old meat locker behind a closed-down butcher's shop off McDonald Avenue. The place smelled like rust and old blood. Vito stood there, arms crossed, eyes hidden behind dark glasses, even indoors, even at night. "I need you to tell me something, Jimmy," he said, not moving. "Are you still with us?" It wasn't a question, it was a test. And no matter how I answered, I knew I was already on the wrong side of the scorecard. "Of course," I said, meeting his stare. "You even gotta ask?" He stared at me a beat too long, then nodded. "Good," he said, "because we got a rat, and I need you to help me find him." That was it. The moment. Right there. Like time cracked in half. Because he didn't say if, he said we got a rat. Meaning he knew, or thought he knew. And maybe, just maybe, he was looking at me to confirm it. I left that meeting knowing I had one foot in the grave, and the other, it was already halfway in an FBI safe house.
My next contact with the feds wasn't out of courage. It was desperation. I called the number Special Agent Russo gave me and told him we're on borrowed time. He met me in the back of a dry cleaner's in Bay Ridge. I was sweating through my undershirt, heart doing backflips. Russo looked me over and said, "They're on to you, aren't they?" I didn't answer. I just handed him a napkin with names, times, drop spots, the kind of intel that earns you a deal or gets you buried under the Verrazano Bridge. From that point on, I was a ghost. I still walked into the social club, still played cards, still kissed cheeks and laughed like everything was fine. But inside, I was rotten. Paranoia doesn't creep in slowly, it explodes. Every handshake felt like a setup. Every "how you doing" sounded like a funeral bell. And the worst part, I couldn't talk to anyone. Not my wife, not my brother, not even the priest I used to light candles for before jobs. Because once you start down this path, you're already dead to the only people who ever knew your name. The pressure was unbearable. You ever tried smiling at a man whose grave you just dug with your own words? That's what it was like walking into the club after that. Every face was a portrait of suspicion. Sal would study me too long before saying hello. Even Frankie, my closest friend since we were stealing hubcaps in high school, started acting cold, like he was sniffing something foul but couldn't find the source. I kept playing the role, sat at the same table, took the same drinks, laughed at the same jokes. But inside, I was rehearsing my own funeral. If one of them so much as blinked wrong, I was ready to run. The feds had started using me heavy. I was recording conversations now, small stuff at first, talking about loan sharks, street-level collections, a card game we were fixing in Canarsie. Enough to build a foundation, but not enough to spook the sharks. They needed more. They wanted blood. "You give us Vito," Russo said one night over greasy Chinese takeout in an unmarked sedan, "and we'll give you a new name, a new life." A new life, like it was something you could order off a menu. I nodded, but I didn't feel relief. I felt hollow. Because here's the truth, no matter how dirty this life gets, it means something. It's family, it's loyalty, it's identity. When you turn on that, you don't just lose friends, you lose yourself. The last straw came the night of the Marconi job. It was supposed to be a clean robbery. One truck, 2 guards, in and out in 5 minutes. But someone tipped them off. The guards were armed and ready. One of our guys, Tommy Lucchesi, took a bullet in the neck and bled out on the cold asphalt while we scrambled to get away. Vito was furious, more than furious. He was broken. He smashed the bottle across the pool table back at the club and screamed, "We got a rat in this crew, and I swear on my mother's grave I'm gonna find them." He looked at all of us, but his eyes stopped on me, just for a second. That's when I knew my clock was ticking. I went to the feds the next day and gave them everything, the full map, how the collections worked, the fronts we used, where the bodies were buried, even the offshore accounts. I remember my hand shaking as I slid the documents across the table. Russo looked at me and said, "You just brought down a crew that's been active since Capone's time. You know what this means?" I nodded, but I couldn't speak. He leaned forward. This is the point of no return. I walked out of that meeting a free man by law, but a hunted man by blood.
Back home, I packed a single duffel bag. Left my watch, my ring, even my pinky, the one I kissed when I swore my oath in '79. It was like shedding a skin I'd worn my whole life. One last look in the mirror. I didn't recognize the man staring back. Then, I disappeared. Disappearing ain't as simple as slipping out the back door. It's a slow erasure, like you're peeling off pieces of yourself with every mile between you and the life you knew. The feds moved fast once I dropped the hammer. They pulled me in, sealed me tight. First, it was a safe house in Jersey, some run-down motel near the Pine Barrens. The kind of place where the sheets feel damp no matter the weather, and the neighbors know not to ask questions. Then came the late-night drives, the briefings, the psychological evaluations. They wanted to make sure I wouldn't crack. But I was already cracked, broken in places they didn't know how to measure. Russo checked on me every few days. He started bringing in more agents, more specialists, guys from the Southern District, suits from D.C. One of them, I think his name was Levine, looked me in the eye and said, "You realize what you've done, right? You didn't just flip on a crew. You gave us a roadmap to a criminal empire." He said it like I should be proud. I wasn't. Because even though I was safe, I wasn't free. I couldn't call my wife, couldn't talk to my ma. My kids, they thought I was on some long job upstate. They didn't know their old man had become the most valuable rat in Brooklyn's history. And all the while, I kept listening, waiting, watching the news, waiting for the hammer to drop on the other side. It didn't take long. The first arrest came 2 weeks after I vanished. Big Sal, busted outside a diner in Gravesend. Then Frankie, dragged out of his girlfriend's place in Coney Island. One by one, like dominoes, they went down. RICO charges, weapons charges, tax fraud, the works. The papers ran headlines like "Colombo Crew Crushed in Historic Takedown." Historic, like it was something to be proud of. Then they got Vito. That one hit different. He was picked up outside his sister's house in Diker Heights. They said he didn't resist, just looked at the agents, nodded, and said, "Took you long enough." But I knew what that meant. Vito wasn't just resigning himself to prison. He was planning, plotting. Because if there was one thing Vito Mancuso never tolerated, it was betrayal. My name never came up in the papers, not officially. The feds sealed it all, redacted the files. But in our world, you know, the crew knew. The silence was louder than any headline. They knew it had to be someone on the inside, someone who knew the operations top to bottom, someone who was suddenly gone. I heard whispers through back channels. Jimmy disappeared. Probably skipped town with a dancer. Nah, he flipped, I know it. I couldn't stop thinking about Frankie, how he looked at me those last few days, like he wanted to believe I was still one of them, but couldn't ignore the rot in the air. I'd betrayed men I'd loved like brothers, and in return, I saved myself. Or, at least, that's what the feds told me. But some nights, in the stillness of that motel room, I'd stare at the ceiling and wonder, if I had to do it all over again, would I pull the trigger? The silence after the storm is worse than the storm itself. Once the indictments were filed and the headlines faded, the real weight set in. Not on the news, not in the courtrooms, in me. In the empty motel rooms, in the anonymous apartments with shades drawn and new names taped to the mailbox. The government moved me out west, said it was for my safety. Some town in Nevada, dry air and fake smiles. They set me up with a new name, a backstory, even a job, assistant manager at a hardware store. The kind of place where no one asks questions as long as you show up on time and don't smell like booze. It was supposed to be a fresh start, but there's no such thing when you've got blood on your hands. I'd wake up in the middle of the night in a cold sweat, expecting to hear a knock on the door. Not the polite knock of a neighbor, but that 3-beat death knock I'd seen guys get before they vanished. I kept a .38 under my pillow, even though the feds said I didn't need it anymore. I couldn't sleep without touching it at least once before drifting off. And then there was the guilt. Not the loud kind, the quiet kind. The kind that whispers when you pass by a kid who looks like your nephew, or when you hear a song that used to play at the club while you and the boys counted envelopes. The kind that shows you faces: Frankie, Sal, Vito.
I started drinking again. Not sloppy, not public. Just enough to take the edge off. 1 scotch at night, then 2. Then the bottle started disappearing faster than it should. Some days I'd drive out into the desert just to scream, just to let it out without anyone hearing. Because what was I supposed to do? Confess to a priest? To a shrink? To my reflection? I had no one. The government gave me a new name, but they didn't give me a new soul. Then came the phone call. Blocked number. I answered out of habit, not expecting anything but maybe a telemarketer. "Jimmy," the voice said. Calm, familiar, too familiar. I froze. My throat went dry. "I just want you to know, we know. You can run, but you ain't safe. Not from us. Not from what you did." Click. That was it. No threats, no screaming, just that eerie, quiet promise. I sat there for hours, phone in hand, staring at the wall. They found me, or at least they wanted me to think they had. And maybe that was worse, because now every shadow looked like it had a face. Every stranger might be holding a grudge instead of groceries. The fear, it never left. It just got smarter. And that's when I knew. This wasn't just exile. It was a sentence. A life without family, without peace, without closure. And I was only halfway through it. After that call, I stopped sleeping altogether. I started moving every couple months, like a fugitive in my own life. Arizona, New Mexico, Colorado. Cheap rentals with peeling paint, empty fridges, and neighbors who didn't knock. I'd use different names, burn phones, pay cash for everything. The witness protection program didn't cover relocations after a certain point, not when you go dark by choice. But I didn't care. I couldn't sit still. I couldn't trust anyone. Every town, I'd find a corner bar, the kind where nobody looks you in the eye too long. I'd sit in the back, drink quietly, watch the exits. Sometimes I'd see someone with dark hair, a crooked nose, and my heart would leap. Is that one of them? I'd tense, fingers brushing the grip at a pistol in my coat. Then he'd walk past, just some random guy getting a beer. But the fear never eased. The worst part wasn't being hunted. It was knowing I deserved it. These weren't just criminals I turned on. These were men I bled with, broke bread with, toasted births and mourned deaths with. We weren't saints. God knows we weren't. But we were something. And I destroyed that. I started hearing rumors through the grapevine. Even out in the desert, whispers find their way to you if you listen hard enough. Vito was running his operation from inside. Word was he had guys on the outside moving money, pulling strings. They said someone had already tried to off a federal witness. Not me, not yet, but someone connected. The message was clear. No one was untouchable. A buddy of mine from way back, guy named Joey Ricca, somehow tracked me down through an old number. He wasn't part of the life anymore. He got out, married a school teacher in Jersey. He said he wasn't calling to judge, just to talk. I heard about the indictments, he said. You really do it? I didn't answer. He sighed. Just watch your back, Jimmy. Some things you don't come back from. He hung up. That was the last time I heard his voice. One night, I found myself walking into a church in a town I can't even remember the name of. It was late, empty, just me and the statues. I sat in the last pew and looked up at the crucifix. "I'm sorry," I whispered. I didn't know who I was saying it to. God, the family, myself. And you know what? There was no peace, no light from the heavens. Just the same hollow pit in my gut I'd been carrying since the night I walked into the FBI office. You think flippin' makes you free? It doesn't. It just trades one prison for another. Because even if I lived to be 100, I'd never stop being Jimmy the Rat. They say witness protection gives you a second chance. Maybe on paper, but in reality, it gives you a shadow. My name now is Michael Russo. No relation to Agent Russo, just the name they slapped on me when they moved me to Oregon. I work at an auto parts store. No one here knows me. I fix carburetors, answer dumb questions about spark plugs, and go home to a one-bedroom apartment where the only thing that talks back is the fridge when it hums at night. There's no past here, no future either, just an endless now. My hair's grayer than I ever thought it'd get. I'm 59 but feel like 80. The years haven't been kind. Too many sleepless nights, too many flashbacks. I still see Vito's face sometimes. Not angry, just disappointed, like a father you failed. Some mornings I wake up and forget where I am, not physically, mentally. For a second I'm back in the club, counting envelopes, hearing the clatter of dice, the smell of cheap cologne and espresso in the air. Then reality slaps me across the face, and I remember, that life's gone, and I killed it. I've tried making connections, went on a few dates, joined a bowling league once. But you can't build something real when it's all built on lies. I don't even know who I am anymore. Jimmy died the day he broke the code. And Michael? Michael's just a ghost with a driver's license. Every now and then I still get the itch, that feeling in my bones like I'm being watched. A car idling too long, a stranger staring a second too long at the grocery store. It's probably nothing. But the problem is, it only has to be something once. I keep a go bag in the closet. Cash, burner phones, IDs. I update it every 6 months, just in case I gotta vanish again. And that pistol? Still with me, still loaded, still warm under my pillow at night. People think rats like me sleep easy. We don't. We never do. The nightmares don't stop. The guilt doesn't fade. I remember everything. Every face, every name, every scream. Sometimes I wonder if that's my punishment, to remember it all, forever. I gave the government what they wanted. I helped them clean house. But the house I lived in, it burned down with it, and I'm the one sifting through the ashes. If you're watching this and you're thinking about flipping, thinking about doing what I did, let me tell you something. It's not freedom. It's just a different kind of prison, a quiet one, a lonely one. So unless you're ready to bury everything you ever were, your friends, your name, your soul, stay where you are. Because once you break that oath, there's no going back. You don't get to rewrite the story. You just get to live in the footnotes. Sometimes I dream about Brooklyn. Not the Brooklyn of now, the real Brooklyn, my Brooklyn. Before the condos and the yoga studios, back when the streets had stories and everyone knew your grandfather's name. I dream I'm back on East 2nd Street, sitting on the stoop with Frankie, playing cards with a busted deck and arguing over whether Mantle or DiMaggio had the better swing. In the dream, my mother's still alive. She's calling me in for dinner. Spaghetti with too much garlic, sauce bubbling on the stove. My father's in his chair, cigarette in one hand, a half-read paper in the other. I hear laughter, music, the rumble of a caddy pulling up to the curb. Then I wake up, and it's just me and the silence. There's no going back to that life. Not because they wouldn't take me. They wouldn't, of course. But because I'm not that kid anymore.
That kid's dead. He died the minute he chose survival over loyalty. But here's the thing they don't tell you about betrayal. Sometimes it's not about selling out. Sometimes it's about being the last man to see the truth. The truth was, the family didn't love me. They used me. They used all of us. Loyalty, brotherhood, honor, they were just words, decorations on a wall built out of fear and control. We thought we were kings, but we were pawns. And when a pawn gets cracked, you sweep it off the board and forget it ever stood. I broke the code, yeah, but the code was already broken long before I did it. You ask me now if I regret it? I don't know. Some days yes, some days no. I regret the way it happened, the pain I caused, the friends I lost. But I don't regret walking away from a life that would have killed me, either in a jail cell or in a pine box. I don't miss the blood, the lies, the constant weight of watching your back every second. But I do miss the people. I miss the Sunday dinners. I miss the laughter, the noise, the warmth, the illusion that we were invincible, that we mattered. Now I sit at diners alone, drink my coffee